5, the Pythagorean Theorem. The first thing that we need to look at is a right triangle. In the right triangle, there's a specific relationship between the sides. Notice the right triangle has a right angle in it. The two sides that make up the right angle are the legs. The legs are letters A and B. You can interchange those two. It doesn't matter which one's A and which one's B, but the legs definitely have to be those two letters. The hypotenuse is always the side that's directly across from the right angle. Notice it's always the longest side of the triangle, and it has to be letter C. The hypotenuse has to be letter C. Let's take a look now at page 412. Up at the top of the page, the Pythagorean Theorem is stated for you. It's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And this is the theorem that you're going to use for all of today's problems. Looking at example number 1, the first thing that you should do would be to label the different sides. The two legs are connected to the right angle. It doesn't matter, again, which one's A and which one's B, but the hypotenuse has to be C. In this problem, we're going to try to find the hypotenuse. So the first step would be to write down the Pythagorean Theorem, and then to go ahead and substitute in the values that we do know. A is 12, so we're going to substitute 12 in for A. B is 9, put that in for B, and we're going to try to find C. Using the order of operations, you have to do your exponents before you do your addition. So 12 squared is 144, 9 squared is 81. When you add 144 and 81 together, you get 225 equals C squared. But that isn't C. We have to find C. To undo a squared, you take the square root. So we're going to take the square root of 225, which is 15. It's also a negative 15 because a negative 15 times a negative 15 also equals 225. But since we're finding the length of a side, it doesn't make sense to include the negative amount. So we go ahead and just cross that one out and only refer to the positive one. So the hypotenuse is 15. One way to check this is to make sure that it is longer than the two legs because the hypotenuse has to be the longest side. Go ahead and pause the video and try to complete the gadgets for A, B, and C. Okay, let's take a look at example number 2. Again, the first thing that you should do would be to label the legs A and B and the hypotenuse C. Notice this time we know the hypotenuse, but we're trying to find one of the legs. Again, write down your Pythagorean Theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Substitute in the values that you know. A is 8, c is 24, and we're going to go ahead and try and find b. Again, do your exponents first. 8 squared is 64, 24 squared is 576. This time, however, notice that we're not just adding the two together, we're trying to solve for b. Since I'm trying to solve for b, I'm going to have to subtract 64 from both sides. When I do that, I'm left with 512. Now I can take the square root. Again, ignore the negative 1 because it doesn't make sense to have a negative amount for a distance. Let's take a look at one of your gadgets and make sure that you've understood how to do it. For A, you should have labeled your sides A, B, and C, substituted in the values that you knew, gotten 900, and then took the square root, which is 30 yards. Go ahead and take a second to make sure that if you didn't do this correctly, you fix it, and that you correct B and C. Next, we're going to take a look at the converse of the Pythagorean Theorem. The converse of the Pythagorean Theorem is kind of like the reverse. It says that if you know three sides in a triangle, if you plug them into the Pythagorean Theorem and it works, then it is a right triangle. So it works backwards. So now we'll be given the three sides. We'll plug them in and see if they work. If you're left with a true statement, then yes, it would be a right triangle. You can follow me along on page 414. We're given the measure of three sides of a triangle, 5, 12, and 13. I know that 5 and 12, since they're the two smallest amounts, have to be the two legs, and since 13 is the hypotenuse because it's the longest side. Again, 5 squared is 25, 12 squared is 144, 13 squared is 169. When you add them together, you do get 169. Since this is a true statement, it is a right triangle. If the two values had not come out equal, it would not be a right triangle. Go ahead and pause the video and do D and E. In a second, we'll check one of them. Okay, let's check your got it E and make sure that you did it correctly. Your three lengths were 4, 7, and 5. 7 has to be the hypotenuse, C, because it is the largest number. Substitute the three values in, square each number, and then add 16 and 25 together. When you add 16 and 25 together, you get 41. Since 41 does not equal 49, this is not a right triangle. So do you see the difference where when they're not equal, it's not a right triangle, and when they are equal, it is a right triangle. Go back and make sure you have all of the got it's correct. Put your answers on Edmodo, and then if you need additional practice, you can do the guided practice before class tomorrow.